Thank you, Peter and Deede. That was just beautiful. Good morning, and welcome to the online service of the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship at Stony Brook. My name is Michael Hoffman, and I'm pleased to serve as your worship associate. Our minister is the Reverend Margie Allen, and our Director of Religious Education is Deb Little, who runs our Children and Youth program that takes place each Sunday morning from 9:45 to 10:15. I'd like to offer a special welcome to anyone who is joining for the first time this morning. We hope that something in today's service rings true to you, moves you, and brings you back. Our services do vary in style and content, so we hope you will visit us more than once to get a true sense of who we are as a community of faith. Ours is a liberal religion, liberal in the sense that we are progressive and open to new ideas, that we do not adhere to a single fixed creed, and that we share a commitment to social justice and the common good. We are guided by 7 principles and multiple sources of wisdom and inspiration. You'll find more information about this on our webpage at www.uufsb.org. Our fellowship's annual pledge drive was kicked off last week. During the pledge drive, each Sunday, one of our members will share their reflections on what the fellowship means to them and why it is important to pledge. After our chalice is lit today, you will hear from June Shaveni in the first of these UU minutes. Please plan to stay with us following the service for some virtual social time. You can say hello and wave to all the nice people in the little boxes. Afterwards, we encourage you to move into smaller chat room for deeper conversation. To do this, you can go to our website or yesterday's news feed, click on small group chats, and you will be transported to a room with some friendly people who look forward to chatting with you. It's a wonderful way to connect with others. And for those of you who are visiting us for the first time, it's a great opportunity to find out more about who we are, what we stand for, and why this community is so important to each one of us. Thank you all, and welcome to our fellowship.
Good morning, friends, and welcome to the threshold of sacred space. Let us enter now into the spirit of worship with the sounding of our morning bell.
As I light this chalice, I read these words by Vance Bass. Each day brings struggle. Each day brings joy. Every day brings us the opportunity to ease the struggle of another, to be the joy in another's life. May this flame remind us to carry our light to each other and to the world.
Good morning. I am happy to be here this morning. My name is June Shaveni, and I am here to share a UU moment and talk about how Unitarian Universalism has shaped the role of generosity in my life. Unitarian Universalism has given me many gifts, but for me personally, one of the most useful has been the freedom to consider the spiritual dimensions of my life from a perspective of religious traditions that are different from the ones that I was raised in. Several years ago in Islam, I encountered the concept of zakat, a system of generosity that is calculated using 2.5% of net worth as a measure of required giving every year. Clearly, I was out of my mathematical depth, but just thinking about it sent me off to re-examine my own Judeo-Christian legacy on the subject of giving. And for me, that has come to mean tithing, which is based on the much simpler proposition of donating 10% of yearly income. I calculated a baseline number and realized that I was then donating about 4%, divided evenly between the fellowship and other types of donations. I decided to step up my game. My practice for the last several years has been to actually tithe, 5% of my annual income to the UUFSB and 5% to other charities and social justice causes. I feel very fortunate to be at a point in my life where this is possible. Over the years, this UU fellowship has been for me a catalyst for my spiritual practice, a community of fellow travelers on the path, a good medicine for the correction of my faults, and a school for social justice. It is a real joy to support that.
Thank you so much, June. Eloquently put. And good spring equinox weekend morning, everyone. Yesterday, the wheel of the seasons turned back towards life and warmth and renewal. In other ages of mankind, in some parts of the world, even today, this is one of the cruelest times of the year, the time when all the winter stores are used up, when prey for hunters was scarce, and any harvest of plant life still weeks in the future. The hunger time it was, a time of struggle and suffering for the depleted bodies and spirits of our ancestors. In some ways, I think we might feel some resonance at this time of year, especially perhaps this particular spring. Our service today invites us to think a bit about what suffering is, how we take it on, and how we move beyond it. As you've already noticed, with glee, I hope, Peter Winkler and Deede chose the music of Johann Sebastian Bach to accompany us on our exploration today. Deede wrote in a note to me during the planning process, "Nobody depicts suffering with more eloquence and elegance than J.S. Bach." So today, on Bach's 336th birthday, one layer of our worship experience comes from Peter's arrangements of some of Bach's darker compositions, augmented, of course, by Peter and Deede's own inimitable performance magic. The melody of our opening hymn was written in the 16th century by Nikolaus Hermann and harmonized 200 years later by guess who? J.S. Bach. Hymn number 22, Dear Weaver of Our Lives Design, imagines each human life taking shape in the hands of a skillful weaver. Through those wise fingers, the thread of our timeline takes on colors and creates patterns of the fabric of our lives. I like to think that the threads of our individual lives meet in the weaving, and that the beautiful patterns in those meeting places tell the stories of how we humans collaborate in creation, how we create and recreate one another over our lifetimes. I hope you'll join Peter and Deede and one another in singing Peter's arrangement of this hymn.
Dear
Thanks again to Peter and Deede. The Reverend Rebecca Parker is the former president of Star King School for the Ministry, our Unitarian Universalist seminary in California. She tells the story of Lyle, a man who had served in World War II and survived, the only soldier from that small town in Iowa to return alive. His sister Maxine recalled, "But when Lyle got off the train, he was a ghost. In response to the music and the cheering crowd, he stared back mutely. His blank face did not register recognition of anyone, not mother, sister, or friend." They took him home to the farm. He sat in the rocker in the parlor, wouldn't speak, didn't sleep, and would barely eat. No one in town knew what was wrong. They just knew that his soul was lost somewhere. Maxine decided to keep him company. Whenever she could, she would sit in the parlor with Lyle and just talk. She'd tell him the news from the hardware store in town, or about the potluck at church, who was there, and what dress each young woman wore. She'd tell him how the clean laundry had blown off the line and into the tomatoes that morning. When she ran out of things to say, she'd just sit with him quietly, snapping beans or mending socks. Her brother was like a stone, no expression on his face, just rocking. This went on for months. Then one night, late, after everyone else had gone to bed, she was sitting with Lyle, quietly knitting, when the eyes in his still face filled with tears. The tears spilled over and began to run down his face. Maxine noticed. She got up and put her arms around her brother. Held in his sister's embrace, Lyle began to cry full force, great gusts of sobbing, and Maxine held him. Then he began to talk. He talked of the noise, the cold, the smoke, the death of his buddies. And then he spoke of the camps, the mass graves, the smell. He talked all night, and Maxine listened. When the morning light came across the fields, she went into the kitchen and cooked him breakfast. He ate. Then he went out and did the farm's morning chores.
Let's ready ourselves, my friends, settle in, body and mind, for a time of contemplation, meditation, prayer. I'll start us off with a few words and then let us move into a period of shared silence. The hymn with which we will emerge from that silence to sing together is number 9, "No Longer Forward Nor Behind," which reminds us to notice the gifts of the present moment. So, a few words. Back at the turn of the century, when I was working as a hospital chaplain in Chicago, I drew a picture you will shortly see when our time of silent contemplation begins. At least I hope you will see it. It's faded a bit over the years. You might want to let the drawing guide your meditation as you explore it and figure out bit by bit what is going on in the picture. I, the unskillful artist, drew a picture of a person in a state of suffering at a certain difficult time in their life. But you could also, or instead, ask yourself this question in the silence after the question mark. If you were given the same assignment, what might your own drawing of suffering look like?
We support and sustain our fellowship through gifts of time, talent, and money. For us, giving is a spiritual practice. Each month, we share the plate with an organization devoted to social justice. Our Share the Plate recipient for the month of March is New Hour for Women and Children, LI. This agency was founded to provide meaningful support to current and formerly incarcerated women and their children and families. They promote successful reentry, health and wellness, parenting programs for women at both Yaphank and Riverhead locations here in Suffolk County. They also advocate for reform of the criminal justice system. They sponsor leadership and advocacy training programs that empower directly impacted people to use their experience to effect change. You may donate in several ways. Oops. You can send a check to the address on the screen, use the donate button on the UUFSB website, or you can click on the link in the chat box below right now. Please give generously, and thank you.
Peter, Deede, Thank you so much, friends, for the beauty that you bring to these services. That was Peter Winkler's arrangement of an aria from the second part of the St. Matthew Passion, which describes the disciple Peter's lament after he had finished denying knowing Jesus 3 times. Have mercy, my God, for the sake of my tears. Look here, heart and eyes weep bitterly before you. Have mercy, have mercy. I don't know about you, but the ghosts of such laments have crowded my heart over the course of this pandemic year. I hear the voices of suffering people in news stories and videos and accounts on Facebook posts and in your own words and faces, my people, when I am witness to the sadness and guilt and outrage and helplessness and mourning and longing that has occupied you all at times during this stressful year. At Shabbat service this past Friday, I learned about a story from Jewish tradition, which I had never heard of, in which God, in his mercy, gives Adam and Eve a little gift as they stand outside the gates of Eden on their way to the new life they bought for the price of an apple and mortality. God gives them tears. Thank God for the comfort of tears when they come. And it's pretty ironic, it occurs to me, that I was diagnosed this week with a serious degree of dry eye and am now tied to medicated eye drops. I am out of tears. Maybe you are too. I've suffered in my life, of course, but mostly I've had a good adventure, a gift of privilege that I can only hope I've been repaying with interest over the years. Most of my suffering has been around the ending of relationships, too many ill-conceived relationships, and also around the loss to death of people that I loved. I have known enough about suffering to draw a picture of it. I know you have known suffering too. Emotional pain is an equal opportunity experience we must all accept as part of life, that's for sure. And suffering is the way we get lost in it, trapped in it sometimes. A very human, sometimes agitated, life-stalling, and sometimes debilitating longing for something other than what we have. So I'm personally grateful that I discovered a religious tradition, Unitarian Universalism, that does not ask me to believe that God punishes human beings by inflicting pain and suffering, or that suffering has any purpose at all of any ordained sort. I do not believe that anyone ever deserves pain and suffering. I believe that things happen that cause us pain and that we can learn with experience how to relate to pain as an inevitable partner in our process of becoming our best self. Handling pain involves the development of a pretty high level of spiritual skill set. On the way to mastering that skill set, we all become our own picture of suffering at some point or at many points. Personally, I find the foundational concepts of compassionate communication helpful in thinking about the causes and the mitigation of suffering. Nonviolent or compassionate is sometimes called communication, names 7 basic categories of needs that are common to all human beings everywhere in the world. These are universal human needs, needs that all human beings share as we go about becoming ourselves and establishing a way of life that is fulfilling. And these are the 7. They probably changed a little bit over time, and different words are used to represent the categories, but basically, connection to self and others, physical well-being, honesty, I like to call it integrity, play, peace, autonomy, and meaning. Connection, physical well-being, integrity, play, peace, autonomy, and meaning. We all need all of them. And when these needs go unmet, feelings arise. Feelings are the body's little red flags. They suggest that if you take a look, a real look, a close look at what's going on for you, you will discover that one or more of your basic needs is not being met in whatever is going on. The kinds of feelings that arise for us are also universal. We may have different names for them across the globe, different cultural agreements about how and when they can be shown, but we share the whole range of possible feelings and the needs which, met and unmet, give rise to those feelings. The fact that we share these basic needs and feelings is the basis for our capacity for compassion for ourselves and for others. The way the human body communicates need and emotion is a nonverbal, incarnate language that we share. Let me just give you a few examples of the connection between needs and feelings. An unmet need for connection may give rise to feelings of sadness, of anger, loneliness. An unmet need for integrity may give rise to feelings of guilt or shame or embarrassment. An unmet need for safety, an aspect of physical well-being, might bring up feelings of fear, of anxiety, wariness, mistrust. You can find out more about NVC, nonviolent communication, by Googling NVC or going to www.cnvc.org. It's a very interesting paradigm. So suffering sets in when we find ourselves alone for an extended time in a field of what appears to be intractable emotional pain, which, if we are able, we are working to understand, to process, and to resolve. Feelings that arise in any situation, in any combination, can become overwhelming and entrenched, and patterns of thinking can arise that reinforce the sense of being hopelessly trapped in those feelings, in that state of longing, of which we may or may not yet really be aware, for something we don't have and apparently can't have, or something we do have and we desperately don't want. Lyle, whose story we heard earlier, was trapped in the most extreme configuration of suffering, the result of repeated, horrendous, essentially unprocessable traumatic pain. He was shell-shocked, to put it in the vernacular of World War II, a condition we now call post-traumatic stress syndrome. His sister, Maxine, it turned out, had the quality of pre-existing bond and an intuition for healing and the love and the patience to treat his condition. She was present to him. She represented in her words and her presence the world from which he had dissociated. Every day she invited him in, created a path that he might one day choose to take back into the real world he had left. And one day he was actually able to risk that first big step. Suffering people almost always have choices after the period of initial shock. Hold on. I swear. let's see, let's go back there again. Suffering people almost always have choices after the period of initial shock that you go through. I say choices, but people can't always see those choices without the help of therapy. We can choose to pretend we're okay, to deny the pain or to minimize it, numb ourselves to it, and in the process disconnect from the very people who could help us figure out what to do. We can actively nurture, compound the pain, or suppress it. In either case, it tends then to leak out into relationships in unaccountable and destructive ways. We can tell ourselves stories about who is to blame or what we've done to deserve this pain. All of these responses are meant to give you relief, but they all eventually are hell-bound to backfire. Much more helpfully, we can, after the initial shock wanes, maybe with help, talk to the pain, sit with the pain, ask what it needs, ask what needs it is pointing to, and then set about figuring what some of the ways are to meet the need or those needs. It takes courage to ask your brain to work with pain in a constructive way. Often, pain is asking you to make a change you cannot yet even imagine yourself making. To quit a job, to leave a relationship, to own your part in a breach of trust, to admit that you're addicted, to ask for help. It took courage for Lyle to sit with his pain the way he did until the day he was finally able to cry, and then to talk, and then to take the first step back toward the chores. This is the picture you saw before of someone's effort to help a suffering person who is separated from life by the different kinds of barriers pain has erected. A helping hand reaches as far as it can through those barriers, offering the sustenance of the four elements, the ones we recognize at our homecoming service. Earth, here seen as wheat, air, a feather, fire, our chalice, water, waves. The power of nourishment, of breath, of determination, of love. The means of breaking free, the means to step out, the means to get back to the chores. In the drawing, you'll notice where the fingertips of the pink hand actually penetrate the bricks and the wire and the fence pickets. They lose their color, drained by the depth of the sufferer's despair. Suffering is like that. The fact that suffering is hard to touch doesn't mean you stop reaching out, though. Stop bringing water and bread, wings and warmth to the starving, to the thirsty, the cold, the trapped. Sufferers feel the vibration of love long before they dare to open their eyes to see the gifts that love brings. If you are suffering today, reach out. And if you know someone who is suffering today, reach in. Amen. So as our service now begins to come to a close and we begin the return journey back to the bell and the chalice, we will sing. The inspiring, comforting, healing properties of the experience of worship turn on the confluence of the creative energies of language, music, imagery, and the perception of connection and belonging in the worshiping community. Each of these energies enters and moves through our bodies by a different route. And I know you have felt here and elsewhere the little catalytic explosions of emotion and insight that happen when the different energies meet inside us and tell a new story about who you are, where you've been, where you want to go. In those moments, often a cage door opens and the possible outside it beckons. How can we keep from singing then? Peter and Deede bring us hymn number 108, How Can I Keep From Singing? Say it if you think you can't sing it. Claim the possibilities. They are there.
My life flows on in endless song, above earth's lamentation. I hear the real, the far-off hymn that hails a new creation. Through all the tumult and the strife, I hear the music ringing. It sounds an echo in my soul. How can I keep from singing? What though the tempest round me roars? I know the truth it liveth. What though the darkness round me close? Songs in the night it giveth. No storm can shake my inmost calm, but to the rock I'm clinging. Since love prevails in heaven and earth, how can I keep from singing? When tyrants tremble as they hear the bells of freedom ringing, when friends rejoice, both far and near, how can I keep from singing? To prison cell and dungeon vile, our thoughts to them are winging. When friends by shame are undefiled, how can I keep from singing?
Indeed, how can we keep from singing? This responsive reading is titled Earth Prayer by Mark Nepo. I will say the words in regular type, and Reverend Margie and the congregation should say the words in italics. O endless creator, force of life, seat of the unconscious, Dharma, Atman, Ra, Kalb, dear center of our love, Christ light, Yahweh, Allah, Mawu, Mother of the universe.
Let us, when swimming with the stream, become the stream.
Let us, when moving with the music, become the music.
Let us, when rocking the wounded, become the suffering.
Let us live deep enough till there is only one direction.
And slow enough till there is only the beginning of time.
And loud enough in our hearts till there is no need to speak.
Let us live for the grace beneath all we want. Let us see it in everything and everyone.
Till we admit to the mystery that when I look deep enough into you, I find me.
And when you dare to hear my fear in the recess of your heart, you recognize it as your secret, which you thought no one else knew.
O nameless spirit that is not done with us, let us love without a net, beyond the fear of death.
Until the speck of peace we guard so well becomes the world.
As I extinguish this chalice, I share these words by Amy Zucker Morgenstern. Never has it been more true than now. We extinguish this flame, but the sparks within us remain alight. From each of us in our supposed solitude, the signals buzz and hum, sparking through space one to another, connecting us invisibly but palpably. We are one, and from every window our light shines.
Thank you, my good partner, Mike. Our benediction is some words by the poet Charles Bukowski. Sorry. I charge you to take them into your week with you. I'm going to put them in the chat before I start to read, and you can hopefully cut and paste them from there onto your fridge or onto your mirror or into your journal so that you won't forget. You are marvelous. Oh, can't paste it right now, sorry. But I will when I finish reading it. Charles Bukowski. Your life is your life. Don't let it be clubbed into dank submission. Be on the watch. There are ways out. There is light somewhere. It may not be much light, but it beats the darkness. Be on the watch. The gods will offer you chances. Know them. Take them. You can't beat death, but you can beat death in life sometimes. And the more often you learn to do it, the more light there will be. Your life is your life. Know it while you have it. You are marvelous. The gods wait to delight in you.